This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Really, Los Angeles Rams? Really? It's the Hindsight 20 podcast. I am your host, Jerry Mallory. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. Proud member, small part, but very proud member of the Detroit Sports Podcasting Network. Go ahead, subscribe, all right? Podbay, iTunes, you know what to do. We've been through this plenty of times before. Today's show, it's simple. It's the show before the draft. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of draft, not just the Detroit Lions. We have some things to hash out with them. I've got these two defensive ends, Emmanuel Ogbah. Then I've got Shaq Lawson. I want to talk about them because kind of similar. Some reports came out about Shaq Lawson we want to address. But the NFL as a whole, the LA Rams completed quite a peculiar trade. And so we'll revisit the haul that was going to be given up, the haul that the Tennessee Titans received, how it affects the Lions, and we'll look back at the other two oh-so-famous trades. You remember them, Herschel Walker, Ricky Williams, even if you weren't around. I was too young for Herschel Walker. I'm kind of too young for Ricky Williams. Don't remember it as much. Wasn't a big draft geek back then, and I don't know how old I was, 11 or 12. And so we'll talk about those two. And April in the D, got to discuss our Wings. We got to discuss the Tigers as well as the Pistons. So we're going to start this off, though, with the schedule. The schedule was released. I was a little bit surprised. For some reason, I feel like the schedule was usually released after the draft because, at that point, even when you're talking about some primetime games, you're talking about some key matchups. It just seems like I've always had the draft going and then the schedule being released, but I could be wrong about that. The Lions not getting a lot of love this year. This was talked about. The Lions no longer marketable. We'll address that in just a second. The answer is yes, they are no longer marketable, if that makes sense. Or no, they aren't marketable anymore. However you want to word it. Not a lot of primetime games. We'll go through each of the games briefly. I'll give you my wins and my losses, and we'll see where we end up with that. But just a few quick notes on the game. A lot of 1 o'clock games this year, with the exception of two. You've got the home opener against the Colts. Technically the Thanksgiving game is 12:30, but that's pretty much 1 o'clock. And you've got one Monday night football game. That's going to be against the Cowboys and Dallas. And so, other than that, all 1 o'clock slates, man. We don't go out west this year. We don't have a ton of primetime games, only that one. I kind of count Thanksgiving as a primetime game. Everybody will be watching it. Now, I figured we would have a few more, really two more games, in my opinion. I felt like Sunday Night Football, at some point we get in there. Sunday Night Football is now the marquee. It's the game of the week. More so than Monday Night Football. Sunday night has kind of taken its place as, the top dog. And, you think about the Lions, they weren't top dogs last year in any event, going 7-9, having a horrible start. And then they've lost Sue. They've lost, Calvin Johnson, the bigger names, the two biggest draws on the team no longer here. And now the team's kind of like meh. And so, there you have it. No Sunday Night Football. I also thought that every team, excuse me, that's great radio, right? Clearing my throat. I apologize. I also thought every team got a Thursday Night Football game. Based on last year, I was under the impression that every team played on Thursday Night Football, but I guess not because the Lions aren't playing there. And so there you have it. Let's look at these games. We won't spend a whole lot of time, 10 minutes on each one, but just briefly, each game, the slate for our team, and I'll give you the wins and the losses. Now, I've been going back and forth. My first iteration of this, I looked at the wins and losses. I'm like, no, the Lions will not be that good this year. So I had to look over this again. And now I think I'm in a better place, if you will, in terms of the wins and losses. It's all early. We don't know 100% what team is going to be good or bad. Now, I will say this. Last year, the schedule looked tough, for the first 5 games, or the first 5 games, I think, were all over 500 teams. I have to check on San Diego, but You get the point. We were on the road. We were playing really good teams. You had the Broncos in there. You had the Cardinals. These are some teams that end up holding their weight. Once we looked at the end of the year, and because the schedule always fluctuates, you think one team's going to be good. They're not. Well, the first 5 games were as difficult as advertised. Seattle, Denver, those were some tough games. And unfortunately for our team, it showed, as well as the Minnesota Vikings. You start off the year with a road game against the Chargers. Now, the Chargers the year before, I think, were pretty good. This year, not so much, but it's the first game. It's a road on the West Coast. And it looked like our boys got tired. We started off really strong and just looked bad. So in retrospect, no, the Chargers weren't that good, but it was a road game. Bam, give that to L. Then you had Minnesota, really good team. Denver, yeah, they were decent, right? I think they had an okay year. Super Bowl. You had Seattle on the road. Could have been a win, but it wasn't. We remember how that went down. So there were some difficult games. And the 5th game was Arizona Cardinals, where we looked completely outmatched. A little bit different this year. We started off the season against another team that was disappointing, Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, a big reason for their ineffective play was the fact that Andrew Luck was in and out of the lineup, fluctuating the whole year. And we know what this team is when they don't have Luck. We remember what they were before they drafted Luck. This team isn't loaded with talent, okay? I think it really speaks to how good Mr. Luck is, because when he was out, and granted, you had one of those guys, again, you're looking like, man, he's still in the league. Well, he is. It's Hasselbeck. This is going to be a better team. The record from last year, you can't really apply that to the team this year. Now, they hung in some games last year, and it looked like they were going to win the division. Houston, ended up doing what they did down the stretch and got it. Should be a more difficult matchup. I'm going to say, with it being on the road, with this team really looking to bounce back, Andrew Luck, he should play in game 1. This will probably be a loss. It's going to suck because I'll be there. We're doing a little road trip. Me and a couple buddies, our spouses, we're going to go down to Indy. It's like, 4.5 hours, and have a good time down there. Hate to say that. Would love to, use my time and resources, spend my money to go down for a victory. But, just looking at it, I think we may end up losing. It won't last long, though. The next games, the Tennessee Titans, they've got 20 million draft picks, but those are rookies. This could pay dividends for them in the future, but as of right now, young team that has a ways to go. Other than Cleveland, this isn't a team that's loaded with a roster full of Pro Bowlers. But like I said, when you got 20 million draft picks, things can change, okay? And so you're looking forward to seeing what they can do. Not against us. I think we win that game in our home opener. Then it's the Green Bay Packers. Lambeau Field, it was crazy last year. We had that wild victory, the field goal miss. I mean, that was the birth, not of me actually having garlic in my life. Like I told you, I get so nervous for these games. Me and my buddy, and even my wife joined in, we started saying, I need a garlic pill because my heart is supposed to reduce blood pressure. It was the birth of the garlic and lavender. Remember the lavender? For those of you that's been listening from the beginning, workmate of my wife said lavender is supposed to, calm anxiety. It soothes you. So that was the birth of garlic and lavender last year against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau. All of the stats and different things of the last time we won there is gone because we got the victory. But I think we lose this one, and the Packers go ahead and they get that victory. The next game is against Chicago. I mean, talking to my boys at Pride Detroit, as we always say, we own the Bears until the Bears beat us again. I'll pencil that in as a win for the next millennium, and beyond. Until they beat us, we've been pretty successful the last 3 seasons against them. I'll say, even though it's on the road, it's Lambeau, the weather won't be a big factor. And so I'll give us a win on that. The next one, we've got 3 straight games at home. You got to go 2-1 in this stretch. Now, these 3 teams, I don't know how the 2-1 is going to look exactly, but you got the Eagles, the Rams, and the Redskins. Now, the Redskins are, hey, they're good. They won their division. But, do you really believe in the Redskins right now? Like, one of those deals where every year in the NFC East, a new team comes out of nowhere and they look good. And then all of a sudden, they could very well be a bottom feeder. Look at Dallas. Yes, I know Tony Romo being hurt played a huge role in that, but the point remains. The NFC East, whoever wins and whoever doesn't win, all those 4 teams look very similar to me. Now, the Redskins, to me, was the prohibitive worst team the last, 2-3 years. But, now they're in the mix. Eagles could very well be a good team. I think they'll be the one that struggles the most this year because of the new coach, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, this 3-game stretch should be 2 wins. I'm going to give us wins against the Eagles, the Rams. You know what? I'm going to give us wins against the Eagles and the Redskins. The Rams, I mean, Aaron Donald, we saw what they did against us last year. Now, the thing is, if they're trying out that rookie quarterback, see, it's hard for me to even say that's going to be a loss. And, I'm going to change my tune on this one, guys. I'm going to go ahead and say this will be 3 wins, right? 3 in a row, 4 in a row, really, if you include the Bears. So now, now we're on a roll. Now we're looking good. We're looking like we can't be stopped because, you win 4 in a row. But the next game is a road game against the Houston Texans. Very good defense. If you can win a division with, Hoyer getting some love and all these other guys, you got to like their chances with Brock Osweiler. I do believe in Mr. Brock. I think he will be a good quarterback. Doesn't have to light the world on fire in year 1, but I think he's going to be pretty good. And I think that goes down as a loss. So you're sitting there, you're at 5-3 after 8 games. You've got the Colts, you've got the Packers, and you've got the Texans all being losses. They're all on the road. You sense a theme here. A couple years ago we were tough to beat at home and about 500 on the road, and that's all you can really hope for. Now, after that 8-game, first half of the season, it's not a bye week like it had been the last few years. We actually play that very next week. It's on the road against the Vikings. That's going to be a loss. The Vikings, like I said before, a really good team. I think that they may end up being the class of the NFC. We have to wait and see about that. But, I think they may even sweep the series because we've got the Vikings on the road, and then we've got the Jaguars. That should be a win. Jaguars are getting better, guys. I like Blake Bortles. They've had some good drafts. TJ Yeldon, Allen Robinson. They've got some players, but not quite yet. Especially now, this was a road game. I'll be honest with you. I say, you know what? Jacksonville is not a gimme. Not a gimme. Still not a gimme, but at home, it should be a get me. I don't know if that even made any sense. Then you've got the Vikings again. I think, like I said, this may be the team to sweep us this year. Between the Packers, the Bears, the Vikings, they may very well sweep us. I don't think they're that much better per se, but I do think they're probably the class with the Packers, who you can't count out. Now, here's the caveat. Now, as I'm looking on this thing, and I'm doing this fluidly. I gotta make a call back on this. I'm sorry, guys. I forget that the home game against the Vikings, that's Thanksgiving. We're gonna win that game. All right, Thanksgiving game should be a victory. So let's change that from a loss to the good old Thanksgiving Day mojo. I'll have us winning that one. A narrow game, a close game. The Turkey Classic. Lions are victorious. Then, the stretch is not that different. You got the Saints. It's a road game. It's hard to gauge the Saints. They've looked bad the last couple years, but you got Drew Brees. Anything can happen in New Orleans. I'm going to say with that added amount of time, it's going to help us in terms of preparation, licking any wounds. And so I'm giving us the win on that one. Got the Bears at home. Again, I'm giving us a win on that. Now, the end of the year, the last 3 games, I think it's going to be important for us to try to find some wins. Now, if you look at how I've got this record, we're at 9-4, which will be right in the thick of things for a playoff berth, but I think the Giants and the Cowboys both defeat us. I hate to say it, but it's late. It's road games. Now, weather may be a factor in New York, and so you got to give them the edge. I think the Cowboys have a bit of a bounce back year, and they go ahead and find that victory. Monday Night Football, they'll be hyped. We'll be hyped, and we'll fall just short. The last game of the year may be a do or die. This may be one of those games where it's like, you win this, you're in the playoffs. If not, forget about it. I don't think 10 wins is going to be, division deciding this year. And so we'll be fighting for a wild card spot. Last game against the Packers, I'm giving us that win. So as of right now, I've got us at 10-6. Things are subject to change. I am glad for one, though, that we're playing at home the last game of the year. I actually tweeted out Thursday. I'm at Jerry Mallory NFL on Twitter. I actually tweeted out last Thursday saying, based on the schedule, how things have went down. And yes, I'm doing this long form. Remember, 140 characters on Twitter. I can expound on it more this year. The way things have gone down, playing on the road, all of these years. We were on the road last year against the Bears, year before that, on the road to Lambeau, that decided the whole freaking division. We better be playing, not just at home. I want the Packers at home. I tweeted that out around, I think, like 3 o'clock or so on Thursday before the schedule came out. And the NFL listened, man. I don't know if Roger Goodell has my Twitter personally, but, something happened. And lo and behold, not only are we playing at home, week 17, we have the Green Bay Packers. So you got to love that. Where do you have us going this year? I've been seeing 10 wins. I've been seeing, 9 from some, 8 from few of the beat writers. I get it. I don't think we're a 10 or 9 win team. I honestly don't. But when I go game by game, that's what I have. The schedule does look easier according to last year's records, which kind of, it held form for us in 2015. Doesn't always hold form every year. Based on last year's schedule and last year's record, we had one of the worst and toughest, schedules. This year is the exact opposite. We've got like the 4th easiest. So, at the end of the day, you look, you sit back, and you let the games come as they do. I don't think this is a 9 or 10 win team. I honestly don't. But hey, I look at each win, I look at each loss, I look at each game, and here's where I'm left. We're going to move on a little bit, switch gears. We talked about the Lions quite a bit. We've got to discuss this Titans and Rams thing, man. I mean, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, the Rams went big. They went all in. They did everything they could. And now the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, they have the number 1 pick in the draft. Tennessee, they got the quarterback already. They would have liked Laramie Tunsil, no doubt about it. But the number of picks that they've received now, they are sitting pretty. So, if you've been living under a rock for whatever reason, welcome back from under the rock. The Rams have acquired the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, trading with the Tennessee Titans. So, what happens is the Rams get the number 1 pick. Tennessee now gets pick 15 in this draft. They get 2 second-round picks at 43 and 45. They get a 3rd rounder in 2016. And then in 2017, which would be next year, they get their 1st round pick and their 3rd round pick. That is crazy. Yes, I just mentioned a ton of picks. It's true. It's not a typo. The Rams get the 1st pick, okay? Whoop-de-doo. Jared Goff, you better be amazing, or Wentz, whichever one you draft, they better be amazing. I'm not as confident in them as apparently, the Rams brass, confident as they are, but they're the one making the decision. They get the number 1 pick. Again, Tennessee gets pick number 15, pick number 43, pick number 45. Those are both second rounders. Pick number 76, that's a 3rd rounder all in this year's draft. And then next year they get a 1st rounder and they get a 3rd round pick. What are you thinking, Rams? Seriously, did something happen? Andrew Luck 2.0 entered this year's draft. I just don't see it. Carson Wentz and or Jared Goff, they don't move the needle like that. And so I think if you're trading your number 1 pick or for a number 1 pick and you're giving up this much, it's got to be, I would even say a Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota deal. Those were 2 very fine prospects, okay? What did I miss with these 2 guys? Did something happen and Deshaun Watson become available? He's a guy that's looking like going to be the surefire number 1 pick. He's looking like a guy that, maybe a team would give up a ton for. As I'm looking through the years, I don't even know if Matt Stafford would have been a guy that you give up that much for. However, in terms of the arm and the pedigree, he certainly was a highly touted, much more highly touted prospect than these 2 bozos. And they may turn out and be well. They may be fine players. But you give up that much, it better be an Andrew Luck in the draft. It better be someone better than these 2 guys. And it seems like every time one of these trades happen, the person that's given up all of these picks for the players, very rarely does it seem to pan out in their behalf. Let's go back. Ricky Williams, Mike Ditka, old school guy, doing his thing. He's used to having, the Chicago Bears and this vaunted defense with a great running back. And so he looked and he saw that Ricky Williams was available. And so just to move up 7 spots to the 5th pick, they made a trade. And this is what the Redskins end up getting. The Redskins had the 5th pick. Instead of that, they went to 12 and they received the following. This was the Ricky Williams draft. Pretty much Mike Ditka made this deal. He got Ricky Williams. He got, a ton of hype for this guy, and that was it. The Redskins end up receiving that year the 1st round pick, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th pick, all in that year, just to say, hey, you can have Ricky Williams. And Ricky was a fine running back, but didn't last that long in New Orleans. Mike Ditka, Ricky Williams experience was a fail. Oh, I'm not done. Because not only did they give up a 1st that year, then a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th that year, they went ahead and said, you know what, in 2000, when Y2K hits, because, hey, the computers might crash and we might not even be here, we'll give you a 1st round pick, which ended up being the 2nd pick overall in 2000, and a 3rd pick. Dude, how did that work out for them? I'm not going to say it worked great for the Washington Redskins because, they, in those years, didn't draft the best, and so, you can't fault a team for making the selections where they're at. You can't fault a team and say, oh, they should have drafted Ricky Williams because they don't know how to draft. No, you assume that you pick up these draft picks and you have a competent guy. And so although the Redskins didn't, they didn't light the world on fire, it didn't set them up for success for years to come, still a horrible move by the New Orleans Saints. It set them back, I would say. And Ricky Williams didn't work out that well. Now, the one that everyone talks about, because this trade actually did have the adverse effect. This trade actually was monumental in this case of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys, look, Herschel Walker, fine player, running back. All of a sudden, the Minnesota Vikings are like, we want him. We'll give you whatever. It can be picks. It can be players. We don't care. We want Herschel Walker, and we're willing to do whatever we can to get him. And so what they ended up doing was giving up quite a bit, okay? They gave up, and I'll give you the names, linebacker Jesse Solomon, linebacker David Howard, cornerback Isaiah Hope, running back Darren Nelson, defensive end Alex Stewart. Now, here's all the draft picks they gave up for Herschel Walker. Minnesota gave the Dallas Cowboys the 1st round pick in 1990, and that this little few trades and things went along. They ended up getting Emmitt Smith as a part of a package, but that 1st round pick was instrumental. They had some doing a 2nd round pick. They did a 6th round pick the following year. It was a 1st round pick, and that ended up being Alvin Harper. 2nd round pick in 91. In 92, it was a 2nd round pick, which ended up being Darren Woodson. Also a 3rd round pick in 1992. Then a 1st round pick in 1993. These picks and these players were important because Dallas used those picks. They used those players and end up being the dynasty that we see. We know about Emmitt Smith. We know about, Aikman and Michael Irvin. But yes, Harper and Darren Woodson, guys that were acquired in that trade, were instrumental. Emmitt Smith, instrumental piece, acquired pretty much because of that trade. These things typically don't work, guys, okay? And the Rams, they should, they did get some good players, okay? I'll give them credit. Just a few years ago, they had a decent haul. Michael Brockers and Zach Stacy and, Janoris Jenkins. They just did this recently. And so it was a case where Washington giving up all these picks, it didn't really help them because, hey, RG3 is now with the Cleveland Browns. But again, I'm going to say it once, I'll say it again. You can't fault these teams that acquire these picks if it doesn't pan out. You drafted all these guys, it didn't mean anything, because sometimes it does. And I would say the more picks you got, the more chances you have to make an impact. One player, you love it. All the glitz and glamour. It's LA. It's the new quarterback, but this is just the wrong year to be doing this. And I think the Rams should know better. They saw, yes, Brockers and Stacy and Jenkins, good players. RG3, it didn't work at all. They won that trade. It's not even close. Now, they didn't get as good as you thought, You pick up all these draft picks and players. You say, hey, this should be the impetus of us turning things around. The Rams have not done that, but they got some good players, man. And so they look and see the benefit of acquiring picks and how you can love a quarterback, but it might not pan out. And they go and do basically the exact opposite. They're going to say, we'll give you Brockers and Stacy and Janoris Jenkins, et cetera, for a quarterback that might not pan out. Very odd move by that team, but hey, it is the Rams. LA, I wish you the best. That's all I got to say. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little April in the D, a little bit of draft talk specifically for the Detroit Lions, and then we'll play some cool music and head out. Jerry Mallory here for the Hindsight 20 podcast. Listen, guys, it's simple. If you want your ad to be placed here, if you want an opportunity to link up with one of the up-and-coming podcasts, not just mine, but the whole network, send us a line, hindsight20podcast@gmail.com. The Hindsight 20. We're going to get back into the NFL and the draft in just a minute. We got to do a little April in the D. And, bittersweet. Today it's Sunday. The Wings got the win, which that was cool. We needed that. Tigers lost, but they're still looking pretty good. And then our beloved Pistons. It's been a long time since they've been in the playoffs. Couldn't pull things out. Starting off with the Wings, like we said, big win for them. It was much needed. You're down 2-0. We already know about this. Now, hockey and baseball, there's been times where, yes, teams have gone down 3-0 and come back. But who wants to do that? And so they got the victory. Mrazek, the guys look really good in front of him, but you still have to give him credit for getting the shutout. A shutout is a shutout is a shutout, right? And so they looked good. This has been a feisty, man. This has been so feisty. These two teams don't like each other, and they're showing it. 2-0, big win. And, I don't think we win this series. I said that from the beginning. I kind of stand by that. I feel like Tampa Bay. Now, our shining hope is the fact that Tampa Bay just, they're beat down right now. They're not healthy at all. And so, that could be your saving grace. That could be the situation where, if they lost, I would say they would look back and say, man, we just didn't have enough guys. Too many injuries, not enough steam to move forward. I don't think we win the series, but it's good to get this one, defend yourself at home, find a way to win one on the road, and then you're in the mix. Now, the Tigers, they're 7-4. They're looking good. They're looking solid. Thing of it is, though, the White Sox, who are much improved, they're still looking good. Kansas City, they were kind of decent last year. World Series, they're looking good. And so this is going to be a fun division. It's way too early to be looking at standings. But just some quick notes from the first week being done and away with. Nick Castellanos is looking good, man. And not just hitting the ball, which he's doing at a pretty good clip right now. He's also looked good defensively. We know this is one of his liabilities. Can he ever be a plus third baseman? I don't know. But as long as he's not a liability out there and he's raking as he is, you got to love what he's doing so far. Everything's coming together for the young man. He's hitting 350 with power. And so, that's great. Miguel, he's starting off slow. That's fine. I'm not worried about Miguel. I'm not worried about Justin. I'm not worried about Victor. Those three guys are pros. They've been in this thing for a long time, and they're going to be just fine. But you love the early returns you're getting from Iglesias. Salty's looking good. Salty Lamakia, kind of sucks that we lose McCann for a little bit, but it is what it is. This is the benefit of having a professional like Salty Lamakia as your backup. One guy goes down, the other guy comes in, and we keep rolling. Verlander's been up and down, looking to see a little bit more consistency out of him. Anibal got roughed up a little bit today. Jordan Zimmerman looking really good so far. Piston game, it was a bummer, man. I really feel like this could have been the one that we stole. And I think we lose in 5 or 6. I've said that from the beginning. But we came out hot, man. Marcus Morris, KCP, those guys were lighting it up, but it just wasn't enough. There were some deficiencies. Tobias Harris looked horrible on offense and defense, and just couldn't get the job done. You let that big three get 80 points on you, it's going to be a tough night. LeBron was more of a facilitator. When he wanted to score, he was able to. Kyrie struggled early on and then got hot, man. And, KCP is the guy that's going to be checking him in this series. KCP is a good defender, one of the best in the league. But these switch-offs were just murder for us. They kept switching, and our biggest liabilities on defense is Tobias Harris and Reggie Jackson, and it showed. I mean, how many times are you going to switch LeBron on Reggie Jackson before something changes, man? I'm going to have nightmares. I already know about Kevin Love being wide open and hitting that three-point shot. So it just sucks to see them lose in that fashion, but they hung in that game. And when you got the other side of the coin, guys like the Houston Rockets having no business playing the number one seed in the West, getting blown out, they will probably continue to do so and get swept. The Pistons are different. And this is why I really want us to get the 7th seed, because other than LeBron and the Cavs, I really think we can hang with any of these teams in the East, especially Toronto, who to me just doesn't impress. They choked last year, got swept in the playoffs, and right now they're down. Indiana's up 1-0, getting that road win already. This is why I wanted to face them, because they just don't really instill fear. I don't think they're anything to worry about. The Pistons can hang with any team, in my opinion, in the East, except for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And first game was a good one. We hung in there, not enough. Now, we cover the Pistons, as you know. It's a monthly podcast. Count that baby in the file. We had Jake Chapman from 105.1, as well as Blair G, who is the NBA and Charlotte Hornets aficionado, on our last show. So check that out on the Detroit Sports Podcast. And hey, as you know, all throughout the playoffs, all of the major shows will be covering both our Wings, and the Pistons. And yeah, a little bit of Tigers too. We got Tigers talk specifically for that. Once the playoffs is over, as we know, everyone's going to be keyed in on the Detroit boys and the old English D. But for now, hey, we're keyed in on our Red Wings and our Pistons. Oh, man, it would have been so cool if the Pistons could have found a way to steal this game. But game 2 is Wednesday. I'm looking forward to it. I think Cleveland's going to hit us with a haymaker, personally, on Wednesday. I think we hung in this game. This would have been the one to win out of the first two. I'm expecting a haymaker from them coming up Wednesday. But I've been wrong before. I did not like the Ziggy Ansah pick. I always bring that one back up. I've been wrong on a lot of things, but that's just one that always sticks to my head. Not loving the Ziggy Ansah pick. And so hopefully I'm wrong about this. I'm expecting Cleveland to throw a haymaker Wednesday and win handily. So we'll see. It's in Cleveland. I think they're going to probably respect us a little bit more. We'll see what happens. Now, before we get too Lions heavy into the draft, I want to talk about the impact of the Tennessee trade now and how it affects the Lions. For one, I don't think it affects the tackle position situation. Some people are saying, well, now, at 15, Tennessee will probably nab a tackle, and that's going to screw us up. I feel like Stanley and Conklin and Tunsil, no matter how you slice it, whether this trade happened or not, will probably not be available. Now, just because Tennessee is at 15 instead of 1 doesn't change that, in my opinion. I just think out of the first 15 picks, there will be 3 tackles taken. And I think Conklin, Tunsil, we know Tunsil, and Stanley will be those 3 picks. And so no matter who is drafting where, what trades went on, I don't think it impacts us that much. Now, things do change, though, in the second round. Remember, the Titans have 3 second-round picks now. They've got picks at 43, 45, and then they've got their own second-round pick. They're going to take a chance on the guy, I feel like. One of those talented guys that could have fallen to the Lions. I don't think they will be there anymore. At least one of them. Now, Reggie Ragland, people are saying there's no way he falls. I still feel like he goes in the second round. Not saying he would have went to the Lions pick. I just think he falls. He's one of those players where he looked great in college, but because of the speed issues and because of, the way the NFL has changed, I think he falls to round 2. And so I can see Tennessee now saying, yeah, we'll definitely take a chance on this guy with one of the first picks in the second round. But at 43 and 45, this is where things get tricky. This is where the Lions may, they may lose out on one of those prospects. One of those guys that I've talked about falling and slipping. whether it's a Robert Kimdichie, maybe, and I've been seeing Andrew Billings' name quite a bit as a guy falling. Corey Coleman, these are all Chris Jones. These are names. These are valuable players that could very well fall to the Lions. But, you've got a team in Tennessee now. They've got 2 picks right before we pick 43. And just case in point, you go to Walter Football at 43, they've got the Tennessee Titans taking one of those guys that we would have probably loved to fall to us in Taylor Decker. Now, will Taylor Decker fall this far? I don't know. I don't think so. I can see the Lions even picking him at 16. But, if we were to pick someone else and we're sitting there with an opportunity, and this is where things get tricky, because at 43 and then at 45, they got them picking Sterling Shepard, and then we pick right there at 46. So more so in the second round, I think, we may get screwed, as opposed to, the Rams having that pick. I think the Titans now with 3 picks before we pick at 46 in the second round, they take a chance on a Kimdichie possibly, or a Reggie Ragland early on, maybe even a Jalen Smith. So I don't think the first round bothers me as much. The Lions wise with that trade, like I said, the first 3 tackles I think are gone no matter what. But the second round, just look at some of those names at 43 and 45. Just in this mock alone, you're looking at a guy that, man, we'd have loved if Taylor Decker fell to us in the second round. And so it is what it is. You move on, and this is why you have a scouting department. This is why you have resources. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. There are going to be plenty of talented players there at 46 from the Lions picking the second round. Now, the trenches. It's all about the trenches, right? Emmanuel Ogba, and Shaq Lawson are 2 guys I want to talk about at this point. I feel like both of them will be available. One of them will be available at least, if not both. Now, just this past weekend, the Lions supposedly just fell in love with Shaq Lawson. They gave him the old explosion test. I don't know if that consists of, feeding him chili beans and X-Lax. I'm sure they're talking about a different type of explosion. In all seriousness, the word was they were so impressed with him, they haven't seen explosion this good in a defensive lineman since Jadeveon Clowney. Is it a smokescreen? Is it legit? You tell me. I like Shaq Lawson. I actually like Lawson and Ogba quite a bit. I think they both would be, very good compliments next to Ziggy Ansah. We're not literally next to him, but in terms of on that defensive line. Now, Shaq Lawson, being compared more so to Courtney Upshaw, he's a little smaller, a little more compact. The explosion supposedly through the roof. He's at 6'3" and 269. I don't feel as though he's that athletic freak. Although explosive, he has a nice little spin move. I don't think he is a pure defensive end. You think Courtney Upshaw, a guy that was he can line up at DN, but he can also play like a little bit of a linebacker in a 3-4, and that's kind of how I see Lawson. I do like him though. I think if they were to pick him, I'd be pleased with it. I favor though Emmanuel Ogba. Now, just me personally, both players are fine. I think Shaq Lawson's been getting a little bit more love. I actually like Emmanuel Ogba just a little bit more. Now, this big boy went ahead and ran like a 4.6 at the combine. Now, when you're 278, he's got a little bit more height at 6'4", a little bit more weight. That's impressive. And we talk about explosion drills, whereas Shaq Lawson really shined, the 3-cone, the 20-yard. Ogba's right there with him. Ogba with the broad jump, right there with him. 120 versus 121. Ogba a little bit better in the vertical at 35 inches opposed to 33 inches. And so for me, if Ogba and Lawson is there, I'm giving the nod to Emmanuel Ogba. I think he's a little bit more athletic. He's a little bit bigger. And despite the love that the Lions are giving in terms of this explosion drill they gave Shaq Lawson, I think Ogba, looking at film, looking at, some of these measurables, is a little bit more explosive, a little bit more athletic. And whereas Shaq Lawson, because he's a little bit more compact, you look at him as like a linebacker, I think Ogba is a no doubt legit defensive end. Any way you shave it, though, You put one of these young boys next to Ziggy Ansah, I think you're headed for some success. I really do. And this is why the trenches is kind of king in this draft for the Lions. You look at that first round and all you see is offensive line, defensive line, Sheldon Rankins, Jack Conklin. And I'm here to give you that vote of confidence that yes, 9 times out of 10 is going to be in the trenches. But I'm going to give you 2 names, 2 guys before we get out of here that would change that. 2 names, if they were to fall to the Lions, they would consider them, potentially pick them. 2 names that are not in the trenches that the Lions may consider with the 16th pick. First off is Vernon Hargreaves. Now, why might he fall? Because he's short. They've got him listed in the 5'10" range. It's generous. But this young buck out of Florida is, to me, possibly the best pure all-around corner in the draft. Jalen Ramsey is amazing, okay? But he's a safety / cornerback. Hargreaves, if he had about 2 or 3 more inches on him, he would be a top 5 pick in my opinion. And, because of the size, though, he may fall. But if he's there at 16, it's going to be hard to pass up on him. And so we talk about the trenches. The other thing is, if he falls to 16, that means some of the guys we were hoping and that would be available in the trenches is gone. That means probably Sheldon Rankins is gone. That means Shaq Lawson maybe jumped up and is gone. And so for this skill position guy to fall to you means some of your favorite targets have been picked. And so it's not a bad consolation to walk away with the best cover corner in the league, in the draft. You pair him up with the young secondary that we have, I'd be fine with it. The other guy, of course, is Ezekiel Elliott. I want to call him Ziggy Elliott so much because I'm used to saying Ezekiel, Ziggy Ansah, but we don't want to disrespect this man. Big Zeke is the complete package. And we saw with Todd Gurley, that these rookie running backs, they can make a big impact. Todd Gurley was instrumental in the success that the Rams had last year. I know they didn't win a ton of games, but the games they did win, you can look back and say, Gurley, carried them. You look at that Detroit game, it was all Aaron Donald on one side of the ball, but then Gurley just running that ball, getting it done. Elliott, I'm not going to say he's a better prospect, but the fact that he didn't have the injury concern puts him in that range. I don't think he falls to you, but the only reason he may is because it's the position. It's not a position that you see a lot of people picking in the first round now. And it all depends on what teams want to do. You look at the first 5 or 6 picks, Elliott's not going there. After that, it comes down to team need. It comes down to, are they comfortable with a running back in the first round? Because the best ones, even the best ones, unless you're Adrian Peterson, and even he had injuries, even the best ones, the shelf life you're expecting probably 5 or 6 years. If something changes and they have an extended career, it's a bonus. And so I think the first 5 or 6 picks, you're not expecting to hear his name called. At 7 with San Francisco, you start considering it. You're hearing a lot of people say that the Philadelphia Eagles at 8 will be the destination. But if he doesn't go to the Eagles at 8, he could start to fall because at 9, it's Tampa Bay. They've already got their running back there. They've got the muscle hamster. They've got Doug Martin. They're comfortable there. New York Giants, it's possible, but I think they've got more pressing needs. The Bears, they don't have Matt Forte, but Jeremy Langford, they're going to be probably counting on him to be the guy this year. New Orleans Saints, that wouldn't be the biggest shock. Again, they have bigger needs though on that line. I could definitely see them going with an offensive lineman. After that, you've got the Miami Dolphins. They've got some young guys. I think they're actually, although they've lost some guys due to free agency, I think they're going to give Jay Ajayi out of Boise State, it'd be his second year, a legitimate shot. I really do think they're going to sit there and let him try to be the guy leading the way in terms of running back. At 14 is the Oakland Raiders. They've got Latavius Murray, so you don't see that happening. And so 15 is Tennessee. Again, if the Philadelphia Eagles don't pick Ezekiel Elliott, barring any trades, all these teams I just mentioned before the Lions, a couple of them could use a running back, but several of them don't need a running back and they have more pressing needs. And so if you're sitting there and you're the Lions and Ezekiel Elliott is there, yes, the Lions have needs, but running back, I would still say is one of them. Stephen Ridley on a 1-year deal, And the thing about Elliott that's a bonus is his pass blocking is A+. And so, no, it's not as good as getting a tackle, but you throw him out there, he's gonna walk into the league and be one of the better pass blockers, one of the better guys in pass protection as a running back right off the bat. And so, again, the only two guys I can see us changing our mind and kind of switching our philosophy of going with the trenches is Vernon Hargreaves. Again, one of the best cover corners. He may drop because of his size. And then Ezekiel Elliott because of the position. And in that range where you would think he'd be picked 7 to 15, it is not a huge need for several teams. And those that could use a running back, well, if you're picking 7 to 15, you probably have a need in the trenches as well. And so they may pass up on the running back for all the reasons that we already mentioned. And that could leave Big Elliott sitting right there for the Lions at 16. That being said, I still think the Lions go ahead and go in the trenches. But don't be surprised if one of these two guys fall, and we've been talking about offensive line and defensive line, that we look the other way. We pick up supremely talented guys that for whatever reason drop, and we go ahead and we address the trenches a little bit later in the draft. I mean, this is a deep draft. Defensive end, defensive tackle, even on the offensive side of the ball, there's some pretty talented guys. And so don't get all caught up on position as much as just acquiring talented players. All right, guys, that's going to do it. It's been another fun show. Next week is going to be big. It's the Monday before the NFL draft. We'll have a full 7-round mock draft for the Detroit Lions. We're going to try to get a couple of guests on. I know Nolan Vassan's going to be super busy. We're going to try to grab him, Chris Gandy, maybe a couple of the boys from Tribe Detroit. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. I'm at Jerry Mallory NFL on Twitter. Until next Monday, this has been the Hindsight 20 podcast.